Hi, for my second lessons, I did basically the same thing in both classes. For social studies, we did state government, and we did basically it's the same routine every day that we did in this class. So I began by showing a video on Brain Pop Jr. on the smart screen of state government, and the students were able to watch the video and listen, and they were supposed to be quiet and watch the video. And then when the video quiz came on, they raised their hand, or it went pretty fast, so that didn't work. They were orally answering the questions. So that's what we did for the motivation. And then for the lesson, I read the chapter about state government, and again, I stressed that a governor is the leader of a state. And then I did a quick review of local government and mentioned that mayor is the leader of the city, local government. And then I read the chapter to them on the hovercam, how I did with the local government. And then I discussed the main points of the chapter, and when I was doing this discussion, they would orally discuss with me. So they were following along in their book the entire time. It's supposed to be following along in their book the entire time, and orally discussing when I would stop to discuss. So during the chapter, I think I stopped 5 times probably. They're pretty short chapters, so, but I stopped mainly when the paragraph would end. It would kind of, give me a clue to stop and break. And I noticed it was easier to do that on this lesson, and so I did that. And then we did get around to the worksheet page. We did not do the worksheet page. We checked the worksheet page from the day before, and then the worksheet page that was for state government for that night was assigned again for homework. So we were a little off on that due to the timing, but we improvised and we made it work. So we checked the local government worksheet and went over the right answers. I did the page on the board, and they orally called out the questions. I called on students at random, the ones that would raise their hand that knew the answer, and then we all wrote them down. So that took some time to write down the answers to all the students, but they were able to see it, so that was good. But since they were on the floor, it took them a little longer to write because of the way they'd have to sit. So that took a lot of time. And then for the math lesson, we did what we were supposed to do the day before. We did measuring in centimeters. So this lesson was pretty much the same as the day before, only they were supposed to know how to use their ruler. We were done with the review. We did 2 problems showing, demonstrating, and then we did worksheets in their book that they were supposed to be working on. They were supposed to complete them every day, do the worksheets every day. And so that's what we did for this lesson. We measured in centimeters, so we answered each question together. I had the book opened, and I would go over each page on the hovercam, and on her board it had to where I could write with the pen, and I would work each problem as I taught. That's how she did, and she would teach as she did the problems, and so I found that easier to do with math, especially because it was hard for me to explain to the students. I kind of struggled with that, but she helped me on that. So that's how we did that. I would work the problems and explain as we went, rather than kind of trying to teach and then work problems, and that worked a whole lot better. So I like that. So we worked on the problems, and we did we measured in centimeters, and again, I would say, okay, work problems 2 through 4. You have 6 minutes. Gave them a time limit so they would know to, do the work rather than look off in space. And so she showed me that too, and that worked a lot. She gave me a lot of hints, helpful tips on doing math, so it was very informative with her, definitely with math being my weakness. So, but while I gave them amount of time, I would walk around and just kind of glance, make sure, point out if one was using the ruler wrong still, or if they were on the wrong side. I had a few students that were still switching over to inches, and then make sure that my ELL learner was on track and just kind of guide her. She had a student sitting near her that would help her too as well. But she was still, when the words would be in the book, she would be confused. So I would just kind of go over there and just show her with my hands, just show her what we were doing, kind of. And so she caught on fast to that, to the numbers. So that worked with her. And that's all we did for that lesson. We measured using centimeters. So that was my lesson 2. And when I did my lesson plan for my unit, I put these 2 lessons together. And so if I would have been in a self-contained classroom, that's what I would have done. I would have, because the math lesson, the lesson plan would be really short, but it took time, working with each student and working all the problems. But on my lesson plan that I wrote out that we did the social studies, and then when it came to measuring, we used the social studies book to kind of tie in with the measuring. So that's what I did on there. And obviously we weren't able to do that because we were in 2 different classrooms, and just the time limit we had in both classrooms were kind of cut short. So it was really nice to kind of see how it's really going to be in the classroom rather than on paper. But for the most part, both lessons went pretty much the same as my lesson plan.